So, on this podcast, we've covered quite a few ways on how different people find and express their creativity. But we haven't really had anyone talk about creativity in building a business and crafting a top quality client experience. But today on Creativity Uncovered, we will. So this is an episode for all of our business owners who are listening out there. Hello and welcome. My name is Abby Gatling, and I'd like to invite you to join me on my journey where I uncover how everyday people find inspiration, get inventive, and open their imagination. Basically, my goal for this podcast is that you'll have all these different creative solutions that you can use at home, at work, at play, and everything in between. And you'll have this whole suite of tried and tested ways to summon that creativity the next time you need it. So today I'm speaking with Corey Wastle, who is the CEO of Wastle and a very good friend of mine. Welcome, Corey.
Hey, Abby. Thank you for that beautiful intro. And I'm very excited to be here.
Yes, this is good. I'm very excited about it as well. So Corey is a financial advisor. He's based in Melbourne. And from that intro, I think people probably might be scratching their heads a little bit and wondering just what exactly is the link between financial advice and client experience and creativity. And I mean, I know that link is actually verse wealth, right? But before we jump in and talk about your business, I think context is really important. And I think people would like to know exactly who I'm speaking to. So Corey, tell me a little bit about you and how did you get into financial advice and what drew you to that profession?
So a bit about me, 38, got 3 kids and a beautiful wife. I've got a busy life. I try and balance my main balls being the business, my family, and just looking after my health and well-being. And that's a constant challenge. In terms of the business and getting started or getting into advice before that, I never intended to be a financial advisor. And I don't think there's a lot of pathways to find yourself into the profession for starters. So most people stumble in there in some way. I did marketing and PR at university. So I was thinking maybe I might be a journalist, I might work in public relations, I might possibly work in marketing. All the while I was doing university, one of my kind of side hobbies, passions was investing. So I'd started investing at 17. So I think I was year 11, last year of school. And I had a margin loan. So that's a loan you take out to invest in the share market, I think by the time of 18 or 19. And this was something that I was really curious about. I wanted to kind of get ahead early in my life financially. So I was always, a hard worker, working multiple jobs through high school, saving plenty of money, and never have the intention of being super wealthy. I just wanted to make sure that money wasn't a roadblock to me doing the things that I really wanted to do in my life and didn't cause unnecessary stresses. And we've all got, people around us and the stories that show us that. And as I kind of finished university, I had a family friend that was in advice that asked me, hey, we talk about money and investing all the time. Have you considered being a financial advisor? And at that point, I actually hadn't thought about it. So I spent a bit of time with them in their workplace, which was kind of them, and decided that, from there I wanted to get into advice. So long story short, did a bit of extra study because I hadn't studied finance to make myself employable, got a role at the Commonwealth Bank in 2011. And that was kind of where my journey in advice started.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I never knew that you actually started off with marketing and PR. Like what attracted you to that degree in the first place?
When I was getting towards the end of high school, I didn't have any real clarity on exactly what I wanted to do, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But I knew I had some interest and some skills. English was one of my better subjects. I enjoyed writing. I enjoyed the concepts of marketing and advertising quite loosely, and thought it made sense for me to do a degree. I did a double degree that was quite broad. I thought the broader it is, the more doors it will leave open for me. And over the course of uni, hopefully I get some more clarity on, which kind of pathway or which profession makes the most amount of sense for me. And that was, how I came to be kind of doing that kind of cross section of kind of domains, I guess.
Yeah, so I guess like you probably weren't so smitten with that particular degree that you could easily be swayed over into the financial advice side of things, right?
Yeah, well, I wasn't easily swayed, Abby. I I certainly had interest in those areas I was talking about, and I wasn't looking for something else to do instead. It was that I did have this real interest and passion in investing and making good choices with money, and I built up quite a bit of knowledge by the time I was, 24 and finishing university. And a bit of a sliding doors moment. I had an advisor in the extended family that I used to talk to all the time, and they asked me that question of, "Hey, you're about to finish uni, but have you considered being an advisor? I think you would love it based on all the conversations we've had over a number of years now." So that was kind of coincidental. And when I spent time with them in their workplace, I didn't walk away thinking, "Great, this is it. I found my calling." I walked away thinking I could really see myself doing this and enjoying it, but I could also see myself, going down the PR path, the marketing path, and really enjoying that too. So in the moment, I was actually quite indecisive, and my now wife was telling me, "Look, you got to make a decision." So I literally flipped a coin in my head, basically. That was genuinely how I felt about it. And that was the terminology I was using at the time. And I guess that coin toss in my head said, try being an advisor, and went down that path. And thankfully I did, because, a lot of great things have unfolded. And in many ways, it has felt like a calling. And, my life has benefited greatly from that, that lucky choice, I guess.
Wow. That is such chance. It seems such chance. But you said you flipped a coin in your head, which means a virtual coin, which
A
means
virtual coin.
you actually subconsciously probably wanted to go down that path then.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I meant cryptocurrency in my head at that time. I just didn't give it the name. I'm not sure.
Man, we could all be very rich because of that.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you started off, you finished your degree, started off with working with CBA, Commonwealth Bank of Australia, if anyone is overseas listening to this. What happened then in your journey as a newbie in the financial advice world?
Yeah, so I went into financial advice with preconceived ideas around what the role of the advisor was, and what I guess the client experience would look like. I thought what advisors would be doing is sitting down with people and having these great conversations about who are you, what's important in your life, what are you trying to achieve with your money, what stresses have you got that money is maybe wholly or partially causing for you. Um, and then what resources have you got? Like what money you're making, what are you saving, what's in the bank, what have you got in your investments and your super? And then from there, that's when you would kind of put your advisor cap on and start to give people the direction that they need and give them the advice that they need to get where they want to go, get rid of stresses, feel in control of their money, achieve goals sooner. So, you have hard conversations with people. You give them some accountability. You be a real leader to them. That's what I thought that advisors would likely be doing. However, when I got into financial advice, it was more of an industry than a profession at that point. I mean, it had a real sales culture to it, and the banks and the institutions at the time certainly had that. A lot of it was more sales masquerading as professional advice, not wholly, but largely. And for me, that was a real contradiction between what I thought advice would look like and how it was actually being provided to people. And at the time, there was a whole bunch of financial planning scandals that broke out. The Commonwealth Bank had their own one, the other banks had theirs, and that all kind of led its way to the Royal Commission that we had into financial services, 4 or 5 years later. So I just stepped into the industry at a really interesting time where all of these scandals were breaking out. There was a lot of distrust with advisors. They're on the front page of the newspaper. And at the same time, I did come in with a preconceived view, maybe idealistic about like what this was actually meant to be. And I think the gap between those two things for me was the motivation to go and start my own business in the first place. Um, I didn't leave the bank a couple of years into my career, still in my 20s, to start a professional services firm, which sounds really, really quick and early. I didn't do that because I wanted to be self-employed, or I had this vision of, having a lifestyle business. I really thought advice in a lot of ways was broken and should be so much better, and wanted to contribute to making it better. I wanted to change what it meant to be an advisor, what it meant to get financial advice. And that meant, doing things differently and starting with more of a blank canvas approach. That was really the impetus or the vision that, pulled me away from the bank into the business.
Yeah, wow, okay. I like that you started your business to kind of meet this gap in the market that, money is so personal, right? Our finances are so personal and it really dictates how we live our lives. It's crazy to me that people were not taking a personal approach to it. So, like, with that idea in mind, you kickstarted Verse Wealth. What does that look like? You have a blank piece of paper. How do you go about building that?
So when I left the bank, I had a co-founder at the time, James O'Reilly, who was also an advisor at the bank. And we took an unconventional approach to starting a financial advice business. The conventional approach is you go and buy a business, or you go and buy a client book off another financial advisor, maybe a retiring financial advisor. So you start with the clients. And you've got to borrow some money and pay some money to buy that client book, but you start with the clients. And then you maybe hopefully get them to refer other clients, and you grow from there. We didn't do that, which at the time was really rare. We didn't do that because we didn't want to inherit the traditions of financial advice, because we felt like the traditions weren't that great. They weren't worth copying. We didn't want to be led by the witness per se. We more so said, well, let's take the hard road and the long road, which ultimately is the only road we can take, which will give us the chance of kind of doing advice differently. And that was to start without a client, without anything really. I remember before we had our first little office in the CBD, we're in a rental property in Melbourne, working on, this kind of wonky IKEA desk at my place, and trying to figure out, like, who are we? What do we stand for as a company? What are our values? How do we want to think about our client experience? What kind of, conversations do we want to have with clients in the first meeting? How will we structure that? How will we consistently have, really personalized, meaningful conversations that enable us to then go ahead and give personalized and meaningful advice? And we put plenty of planning into starting. We probably over-engineered it a bit in hindsight, but that's how we got started. And then we went and got our first client and our second client. And the early days were a lot of hard work for not necessarily a lot of reward. But at the same time, we were thinking, or I guess we were on I would call it a journey of discovery. Like, we were trying to figure out how to take this kind of two-dimensional financial planning experience, is kind of underwhelming in its value, and kind of riddled with some kickbacks and conflicts. How do we get rid of those and turn it into something really personal? And like you said before, Abs, the choices you make with money have such an influence on the quality of your life. Like, we knew that. And we're like, well, this should be such a powerful experience. This should be transformative for some people. Like, how do we make it that? Because we didn't have all the answers from day one. The way we do things now is a manifestation of, thousands of iterations from, these early philosophies.
Yes. Okay. So you basically thought this thing up, tried it, tested it, iterated, and it's kind of just kind of grown from there.
Yeah, we started seeing clients with, we had like a method in mind. Here's the kind of things we're going to talk about in a first meeting. We're going to talk about their aspirations. We're going to understand what's the why or the values behind those aspirations. We're going to talk about what we call, their challenges and their stresses, and get them to kind of rate these out of 10 for how important they are to solve. Like, we had this method for getting to know our clients and understanding, what's under the hood with them and how they're feeling about money and what impact it's meant to be having in their life. And then from there, what you do is you do it and you reflect on how it went, and you go, what worked well and we'll keep doing, and what didn't quite work so well, and how could we do that differently? And I think the process of creating something isn't just coming up with the idea and then going, oh, I've got the idea, I'll execute it, bang, it's perfect. Getting to this state where something is actually, great and useful in society, that's more the idea than, the many iterations after, based on the feedback you get from the consumer or the marketplace or yourself, to go, all right, how can it be better? What's not quite working? What do I need to tweak and tinker with, to keep this evolving, to get it to the point where, as for a business, you've got product to market fit. It just all works.
Yeah. I mean, this just sounds like problem solving after problem solving after problem solving. And that process to me sounds super creative, because you have an idea of where you want to get to, but nothing is mapped out for you. You have no guidelines on literally how to get there. It's all brand new, and through this iterative process, you're actually developing that. Did you think that was a creative act at the time? Did you ever step back and go, wow, this is actually groundbreaking?
I think it was a creative act, yes. I mean, I wasn't walking around every day telling people, I'm on this creative journey, but absolutely, I had a sense that certainly creativity is involved. I think creativity is something we've all got. We perhaps don't express it as often or as well as we could. But I have always viewed business as a creative pursuit, as opposed to just a vehicle to make money. Ideally you do both. You do something creative that has a positive impact on people. Maybe you create something that wouldn't have existed otherwise. And at the same time, if it's a business, it's got to make commercial sense. So yeah, I think it was. And I don't think, in terms of being brand new, I don't think about it as being brand new, because we're not the only advice business in the world that has been on this journey of trying to make advice more valuable and make it more personal. And so many of the ideas that we've got, they haven't originated from us. You get inspiration from so many different places. For me, books is probably the first place. Podcasts is another one. And these ideas tend to come to me personally when I'm relaxed. I don't have too many things going on. My mind's not going a million miles an hour. Maybe I am a few days into a holiday. I've got over that hump where I'm not thinking about work anymore. Or, people talk about ideas coming to them in the shower. It's because when you're in these places, you're more likely to be in that state where you're fully present and more connected to the things around you. And yeah, there's just many inspirations that we've had, and our work, or anyone's work, I think, becomes a tapestry of kind of these interactions and experiences and ideas, and you kind of you thread them all together in a way that kind of works for you and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I that's really cool that you're taking these, you're kind of riffing off all these other things that's going on around you, and using that to create this mosaic of what your business looks like. I totally understand that getting inspired can happen when you are feeling relaxed. But when you're starting off your business and you have no clients, how does that work? Is it the adrenaline that is keeping you creative at that point? Because I kind of imagine it would have been a very relaxing process at that stage.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm casting my mind back to that time. At that time, just before starting the business and in the early months of the business, I was so energized. I was just so full of excitement and optimism. about what could be. And I think, probably naive to all of the challenges that the marketplace and being in business had waiting for me. Um, and I was just supercharged on excitement and optimism. And I think in some ways I was kind of in that because I had so much energy and optimism at that point. I think I was kind of in that state where ideas probably are more likely to flow, they're more likely to come to you. Um, and, I've certainly spent long periods of time where I feel like ideas aren't flowing, and it's really hard to be creative, and now with, three boys under 8, lots of things on my plate, you can feel like you kind of, go, go, go all the time. You're not fully present in the way that you'd like to be. And you feel like, I'm not in this state where I can really use my imagination and let things come to me. That could be challenging. And I think with business owners, one of the things that, I need to do and others might need to do is, create that space where those ideas can come, and you're more likely to be able to kind of get into that flow and be in that state and have time to think. Just
Mm.
simply have time to think. Think your way through, the challenges that you're facing or the problems within the business. And if you've got time to think and just kind of be in that space, you know, that's where I think some of these ideas are more likely to come.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Like sort of giving yourself that silence and space just to sit and be with it. And obviously very hard when you're both a business owner and a husband and a dad, plus everything else that's going on.
Exactly.
Um,
I think like if I could sort of jump in there, Abby, I think like in terms of like creativity, there is this kind of notion, I think, that there's creative people and people that aren't creative.
mm,
You do hear people sometimes saying, "Look, I'm not a creative type," and I'm sure there are like personal attributes that perhaps lend themselves more so to creativity than others. Like we're probably not all creative in equal measure. However, I do think we are all creative, and I think like I don't know whether you've read the book Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, but
no.
that book is all about being present in your life. And so often we can get so busy and in this state of busyness that we almost feel like we don't have the ability to be present. Some do, we don't. But I think the analogy he uses in that book is like presence is like the sky. There can be clouds covering the sky to the point where you can't see the sky at all. It doesn't mean the sky's not there. It's still there. It's always there. You've just got to wait for the clouds to part. And I think creativity is kind of the same. It's always there. We all have it. We've all got some pretty solid stores of creativity, I think, but we put too many clouds in the way. And because we've got all these clouds in the way, we can't really see it or feel it and don't really get to experience it as much as we're meant to.
Yeah. Yeah. Or perhaps like we're only looking at one small section of the sky when actually there's this whole broad vista that's out there. And I agree with you in that I think everyone is creative, but I think that there is a really narrow view on what creativity is. And so that's why I think people get creativity and artistic talents confused. And you do have to be creative to be artistic, and vice versa. But that's not the only form of creativity out there. And so I think that's why it's so cool to have conversations like this one with you about creativity as a business owner and developing these processes, because that's actually going to actually maybe awaken someone to the idea that actually I'm creative because I have done all this problem solving and I have created this thing from scratch or put all these different puzzle pieces together to create one lovely picture. I think it's so important to have these conversations because people just don't. People are opting out of creativity before they even realize that
That's true. They're kind of putting this narrow label on it. But it can be like, creativity doesn't need to be something big like a business. It could just be something really small, just like an experience or interaction with someone. Like it could be a waiter or a waitress that just, makes that 60-second interaction with the customer amazing and a little memorable, whether that's through their humor or their attunement to the customer's needs, or preempting things. It could be someone that's working at Woolworths at a checkout, and then being really intentional about creating connection and experience with someone that maybe
Mm.
has that customer remember them like that. That is its own form of creativity and art. So it can show up in a million different ways. You don't need to like paint or draw to be an artist. Like Seth Godin, um, the great kind of author and marketer, talks about the fact that artists are really anyone that makes art. Anyone could be an artist in any field. It's not about something that you've necessarily like a particular skill. It's a mindset to how you approach things.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned intention before as well. I think that's a really big part of it as well, is that you're not sort of mindlessly going through life. You're actually sort of going, what is this that we're doing now? What's this interaction? And how can it be tweaked? How can I get the most out of this? Or how can I be most impactful in what I'm doing today?
Yeah, rather than just following the way that things have been done.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah. So you are a dad of three. How has this kind of exploration of your creative side at work, how has that impacted or has it had any impacts on the way that you parent?
that is a really interesting question.
I bring it up because the kids' TV show Bluey, you've seen that.
Uh,
Feel like every kid has seen that.
yeah,
I look at that and I see how the parents interact with their kids. And I'm like, that is just shows to me every single day that you need to be creative and on the ball with your kids
mhm.
to keep them entertained, to keep them growing and gently guide them in the right direction. So do you think that your creativity comes out in that way or in any other ways with your kids?
Not immediately. I think shout out to Christy, my wife, who does a fantastic job of thinking creatively about how can we give more experiences to our boys, Brady, Charlie, and Archie. Um, and I'm a little more of a passenger when it comes to generating those ideas. So they're fortunate to have a whole diverse range of experiences at home and socially and so on. In terms of how I guess bring creativity to them. There's not immediate things that jump out to me, Abs. I'm sorry. I wish I had a great answer for you here because it's such a great question.
I think like this conversation will probably get people to think a little bit differently about their own creativity. I wonder whether this will stick with you and next time you're interacting with the kids be like, actually, you know what? This is a pretty creative act.
Yeah, I think I might need to give that a bit more thought.
Yeah. And so you said Christy is super creative with the kids. Like what tell me some things that she does.
I could just be like you get home one day and she has organized what are they called? Like the A-frame things that you paint on?
Oh yeah, like the easel.
Yeah, the easel. That's right. Maybe she's driven past a house that's got an easel out the front. She's like, oh yeah, I'll take that. And you get home in the afternoon and the boys might be in the backyard with, the full smock on, covered almost head to toe in paint, and just enjoying themselves. I think they do plenty of creative things in the kitchen together as well. On Monday morning, we had a new teammate here at Verse, Heather Starr, an executive assistant. And we had a few kind of little goodies for Heather on her first day. One of those was Rocky Road. And my boys wanted to open the Rocky Road, just eat a little bit of it, and then give the rest to Heather. And, they said, look, well, it's a pretty big block, Dad. Like, we'll just eat a little bit. She won't mind. There'll still be lots for her. Christy overheard that. So when I left for work, she made Rocky Road with the boys. But they made their own version of Rocky Road. They put not just marshmallows in there, but they put a few other things in there that you wouldn't conventionally find in Rocky Road. And she would have let them lead that. I'm sure she would have asked them, hey, what do you guys think we should put in Rocky Road? Like, what would this make this Rocky Road really awesome for you? And let them come up with the ideas and then create it together.
I can only imagine what's in it, like
Yeah.
broccoli and all bits and bobs.
Not broccoli. I don't know. Maybe like if you bite into it, you might bite into like a Hot Wheels car or something. So be careful.
Oh, I like that. They've already got creative minds. They have a very broad view of what is edible and what's not. Ah, so, okay, I think that definitely your form of creativity is all around this problem solving and exploration. Tell me, is there more to explore with your business, or do you think you're all done with that now? Like you're tip top at the moment.
No, definitely not. Like there's no end state. I know this sounds like a cliche, but there really isn't. Like you said before, business is really problem solving, and that is something we actually talk about in those words here at Verse. And I remind the team, hey, we've got all these problems, like every business does, and I promise you, when we solve these problems, all that will be waiting for us is just new problems. Hopefully, the problems get more interesting, and more fun to solve over time. So, when we think about our client experience or how well the operations work in the business, none of that is perfect. Like we're constantly trying to solve problems and fix things. We have a process called paper cuts, which we define as small client experience or operational deficiencies that, if fixed, will make things easier, faster, or better. And it's the responsibility of everyone in the business to constantly be identifying and documenting paper cuts. So reflecting on, all right, what doesn't work? What took too long? What was kind of a bit of a pain in the butt? What's been the pain in the butt for a long time? What would I like to change? What doesn't quite work properly? And they document these. They document the paper cut, and then they offer up their suggested fix for it, how they think we should solve it. And every month we have time allocated within the leadership team to go through paper cuts and understand those, and then decide what paper cuts we're going to try and fix over the next month. And I mean, that's just a process that never ends. We've had 340 paper cuts in the last 6 months from our team. So they're all innovating on behalf of the rest of the team and our clients, and that's in addition to taking on big projects, where maybe we're changing CRMs, or we're building this new service, or changing how we price, or building a podcast, or whatever it is. So yeah, the problem solving aspect and the creative aspect of business goes on forever, and I think that's the fun part. Is just enjoying solving problems and making things better. That's the journey.
That's the journey, and I think it's great that you're enjoying the journey as you go through it all.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. When it's no longer fun, that's when maybe it's time to find something else.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much, Corey, for sharing all that with me today. That was I definitely learned some new things about you.
No, great, Abs. I appreciate you having me on, and yeah, it's great to see you doing great things in the world. So well done.
Oh, thank you so much. And also thank you to everyone who's tuned into Creativity Uncovered today. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please share it with a friend. And if you have any questions or comments about today's episode, do get in touch. I love to hear from you all. And until next time, take care. If you've made it this far, a huge thank you for your support and tuning into today's episode. Creativity Uncovered has been lovingly recorded on the land of the Cubby Cubby people, and we pay our respect to elders past, present, and emerging. This podcast has been produced by my amazing team here at Crisp Communications, and the music you just heard was composed by James Gatling. If you liked this episode, please do share it around and help us on our mission to unlock more creativity in this world. You can also hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any new episode releases.